Okay, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself first. My name is Rachel, and I was introduced to Share with my first loss. They had come to me in the hospital and offered to include her remains in their bi-monthly burial, which I did, and forever grateful for that. And since then, this has just been something near and dear to my heart to be able to give back and help other people going through it, be able to offer them some of the experience that I've been through and just provide them with additional support however I can. Angie, do you want to go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your relationship with Share, your knowledge and expertise in this area of loss? Oh, I think her internet went. Well, we'll give her a minute to hop back on. But tonight, I'll just kind of open up and just let you know, tonight we're talking about creating a survival guide after loss. So after going through a loss, it can be extremely difficult to figure out how to navigate through all of that. Just what are your next steps? So once Angie gets back on, she has been working towards multiple degrees to kind of be able to support grieving families and help them figure out what are our next steps here. A lot of times people go into isolation and want to kind of like withdraw from the world after a significant loss, especially with a child, and it can be so difficult. So what Angie's kind of being able to do is provide that one-on-one support with families to figure out what's best for them on that path. What will be their next step, some ideas with maybe other people that she's worked with, things that worked for them personally, what's worked for her. That's a huge part, just because from experience, being able to help other people, it is a different way of working with those individuals, because there's no better way than to have gone through it and then be able to empathize with those people and be able to help them work through just how do you get through it? How do you even get to the next day? How do you survive just those minutes and hours and days and years? Because it's not that there's any one or two things that make it easier. It's just that it's so unknown that just having anything helpful in the process is a huge deal. So one of the things that we really talk about is just making sure you're taking care of yourself. So that's a huge one. A lot of times when we're going through just a loss or anything, and we're working through all the grief, we forget to take care of ourselves. We forget to do things just like simple taking care of ourselves with eating, sleeping. I mean, these things can seem impossible after a loss. So you have to first start with, how can I care for myself and make sure that I'm the best that I can be to be able to get through just day-to-day things. So it definitely starts with that. So Angie, I was just kind of going over self-care as like the first, probably most important thing after loss, because that's probably what can drown us the most. You know, we stop eating, we can't sleep, you know, all that self-care of just those basic things. We're not talking about like going to the spa, which yeah, that could help, but really we're just talking about your basic self-care needs that are very difficult in these beginning things, in which can make it feel like you can't survive this loss. So just basic things like eating and taking care of yourself and sleep. Are there any other self-care things that you would recommend to help get through those early days of loss?
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good point. When we think about self care, we are talking about the most basic things that we have to do to sustain ourselves. So, exactly like you're saying, we need to sleep. It is vital to make sure that you're getting enough rest. The tendency when you're newly bereaved is that your mind spins. And so you stay awake thinking about the loss, feeling those emotions, and you're awake late into the night. A lot of times you get up early. If you have older children, they're still getting up at early. So it's really important to take care of your physical self, and that includes getting enough sleep, eating, hydrating, and moving. And all of those things are kind of like the basis. It's a seed bed to be able to begin to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. Even just, we think about movement, and you're like, there's just no way I can get back to the gym, or there's no way I can work out. But we're just talking about maybe you can go for a 5 minute walk today. And maybe tomorrow it's a 10-minute walk, right? Just getting some fresh air, getting out of the house, moving your body a little bit, getting some just sunshine, warmth, whatever that is, to kind of just bring you back, right? To feeling just back to like the being grounded, right? Bringing you back to whole. So yeah, that early days, that's probably it's more of that. And then I guess, is there another, if you're not in that situation for the self-care where, you're sleeping okay, you're eating, you're moving, you're feeling pretty good, but you just need additional support and comfort, what would be some recommendations for them going like maybe the next level of self-care?
Okay. So after self-care, which is kind of that basic ground level, then we start talking about self-soothing. And so self-care is the basics. It's the things that we absolutely have to do in order to care for ourselves, to create that foundation to heal. Self-soothing are the extra things that we can do to make ourselves feel good. So this
Mm.
is when we're doing things like going for that walk in a place that's really beautiful or meaningful to us. This is the time when we are eating a really good meal to us. It's not just eating something for nourishment, but now we're getting into the things that we do to try and make ourselves feel better, to move us from that place of intense grief and preoccupation, moments that come into our so
Oh, we might have lost you. I'm not sure, Angie, if you want to try using maybe your cell phone. No, you're saying the computer was giving you a little trouble. But what Angie's kind of saying after that fact of, okay, my self-care, I've kind of gotten back to that, but now I'm in my self-soothing. So that's just like, I think of that too as like more like of that coping. Like you have certain things that help you cope. If it's comfort food or, watching a really good movie or a series or things that just kind of bring you a little bit of comfort and warmth. Spending time with a really close friend, somebody like that, something where it's a little bit of an extra added to just your basic needs to help with that soothing process. So she was explaining that that's kind of the next phase of it. And that could be what we've kind of classified as self-care and what people kind of get confused about. So I don't have any self-care. Well, self-care is really just meeting your basic needs. But what we think about is, okay, going to the spa, going and getting a massage. Well, getting a massage could be really helpful. It could be helpful in a way that it helps you release a lot of tension. It helps you relax. It helps you to just have quiet and peace. So it can be some of those self-care things that we kind of think are, those things that we spoil ourselves with. But after a loss, you kind of need that additional comfort and soothing, and that could be something that you do. It could be just taking a day, and like one of the examples she was giving is just taking a walk somewhere where you really just a beautiful place that you really connect with nature, and it's quiet and peaceful. It kind of just like brings you back to just maybe just some of the basic things that you haven't been able to really get in touch with and really connect with for a while. So once you've kind of gone through and you're working through all of that self-care, and you've found some things that are helping you kind of self-soothe through the difficult days, difficult milestones. So we're talking, this can be the whole first year, this could be years down the line, this could be 10 years down the line, with a specific day that is just, maybe it's your child's birthday. Maybe it was what would have been, their birthday, but was their due date and they never made it to that day. So these days can be really difficult. So the survival guide that you need to get through right after the loss can be the same survival guide and tools and things to help you survive those particular days. So you might have to go back and say, okay, well, in the beginning stages, when it was very difficult, I did find that taking that 10-minute walk was the best thing for me. That was the best thing for me, to just be able to do that alone. I put in some music, walk for 10 minutes, connect with nature, and that helped me. Or, hey, the early days, I just kind of took off work and I watched movies and I just sat inside, and that was good for me. Ordered some food, self-soothing things like that worked. And then you can kind of see like, okay, well, I tried that didn't really work. But then when those days come about again, and you have those difficult days, you're kind of going back to those things that you had worked in the beginning. You have this guide that worked for you particularly, and you can say, okay, I'm going to pull these things out. And when those days and those hard days come about, I know what works best for me. So that can always be really helpful. This isn't just, hey, this is what you'll need to be able to do in the first month. This is years and later, when you hit those anniversaries, that you're going to tap back into the survival guide that you use to get through it, to be able to get through those difficult days. So after we've kind of gotten through the self-care and the self-soothing and how we can kind of use this moving forward on those days that are really difficult, what is just kind of, when it's just difficult to just like feel like yourself again, how can you kind of survive that? This is my new normal, and this doesn't feel anything like it felt like before. How do you survive this drastic change of what your life looks like now?
Yeah, so great question. Um, Losing a child really changes things in your life in a fundamental way. This is not a, a kind of thing that you kind of go back from. This is stepping into something completely new, and there is no going back after this.
Mhm.
We begin to learn how to think of ourselves in a new way. We begin to think about our parenting journey in a new way. We begin to think about what pregnancy means in our life in a new way. We think about pregnancy and childbearing in a new way. Maybe assumptions that we had about having babies are different now.
Mhm.
Um, so what happens is we do step into a new normal, and anytime there's a huge change in our lives, it takes time to make that adjustment. And there are different things that we have to walk through in order to begin to feel like this new life fits us. At
Mhm.
first, it just doesn't fit. It doesn't make
Mhm.
sense. It's always feeling like it's tugging and pulling in different ways. And we can even have reactions where, like, nothing just seems like it makes sense. There's nothing around us that makes sense. And so just remaining, being present in the experience, understanding that, yeah, this is really hard and it's going to be
Mhm.
hard until it's not as hard anymore. And having some acceptance for the experience can be really empowering. Understanding that we do not have to rush to feel better. We do not have to rush to go back to normal, because there is no going back to what was before. Our children change us, whether we, birth them and raise them, or if we lose them in pregnancy. Our children change us. And so we are different, and it's going to take time to grow into that new identity.
Yeah, you make a good point. Like, there's so much of us striving to thinking like, okay, once I get past this grief, once I get past, I've survived it, then everything will feel right again. But if you're striving for that, that's why you'll never get there, right? Like, you have to accept that this is what life is going to be like. So then what do we do now, right? So what would be a suggestion if you're able to kind of, I guess, really resonate with that and say, okay, yeah, I get that. And I can let go of the fact that it's not going to be the same anymore. How do you make steps to just kind of get that acceptance? Like, once you've gotten there and you've kind of settled in, what would be your next step to just kind of living? How do you live as a mother or father after a loss?
So there's a couple things. So the first thing I would say is something that I think we talked about the last time we were together, and that is to avoid censoring ourselves, to allow whatever feelings and whatever reactions we have to the things around us, just allow them to be. Don't judge how you're grieving. Don't judge your reactions to things. So there are sometimes people who feel like, I want to be able to go to that baby shower, and I really should be able to go to that baby shower. But you know that inside of you, you are just not feeling that baby shower. And then we'll feel guilty, and we'll be like, wow, what kind of person am I that I'm not like bursting with happiness for, these other people that are having babies. And so we spend a lot of time like judging ourselves for the way that we grieve and for the places that we're in. And so one thing that we can do to kind of begin living this new life is to just let go of judgment of who we are and the reactions that we're having, and remind ourselves, this is where I am today. It's okay to be here. I have been through something really hard and difficult, and I am learning how to be this new person. And so accept the feeling as it is. And you might be surprised that one day it will not be difficult to go to the baby shower. You'll surprise yourself that one day, whatever that was that was still healing has healed. And now you can go to a baby shower. But there's no way to be healthy and to rush those movements. And there's no way to be healthy and to judge those movements. So just acknowledging them, being aware of them, this is where I am right now, and accepting that is the first step to, walking into that new normal. The second thing I would say about walking into that new normal is to know that it is not always going to feel this hard. So we are talking about, this is really hard and this is really difficult, and it's, this is who I am now. Yes, you will always have lost your baby. Your baby matters, and it will always be a defining moment in your life. But the intensity of the grief will begin to recede. That will, over time, the intensity of it will maybe come less often. You'll have greater times where, greater spaces between those waves of grief that come in. So there is hope. You will feel better. You will be more like yourself again, but it's going to be a self that's been through something transformative in your life.
And going back to the first part of that, so let's say you go through that scenario, and I've heard this with a lot of women. It's maybe sometimes it's easier to just tell a friend, hey, I can't attend your baby shower, I have other things. But let's say it's your sister or your sister-in-law, and it's somebody that you really have to be honest with, right? How do you think they can approach that to say, hey, I'm just not ready? What's the best way to kind of handle that? Because I think that's where most people struggle, and why they go and put themselves through the suffering of that, and the trauma of that day, just because they don't know how to be honest about where they're at on their healing journey.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, great question. So if you have people in your life that you care enough about, that you are, thinking about trying to go to the things that are important to them, even though you feel like this might not be good for me, then that's going to be somebody that you care enough about in your life and who cares enough about you that they're going to want you to be able to heal. And they're going to want you to be able to um, do what is healthy and what is good for you. So it is really important to be talking to people way in advance and
Mm,
saying, listen, you're pregnant. I love you. I'm happy for you. And it's hard for me. So it's both ends. It's not either I love you and I'm there
mm,
for everything all the time with, my cheerleader pom poms, or I'm just completely out and I,
mm,
don't care about you at all. Two things can be true at once. You can be happy for them and it can be too hard for you.
yeah.
And so there are things that can be done to allow you to express your love and care and to take care of yourself. So
Mm,
you can send a gift, you can send a meaningful note, something that acknowledges how special this is for them,
mhm,
while honoring your own needs as well. And I think that if you are having that conversation ahead of time, it's a little bit easier. So
mm,
you could, even say, I have my own example. After the loss of my son, my sister-in-law had, a month later, had her daughter's first birthday. And I thought it was a great idea to go. And so I went to the birthday, and for a while, it was actually okay. I was seeing a lot of people. It was very distracting for me. And for a little while, it was fine. And then I started to feel really claustrophobic. And then I started
mm,
to feel like this is too much. And I
mm,
told my husband, we have to leave now.
mm,
And so we picked up and we left. And,
mm,
that was just the way that it was. So there are ways that you can express your care and
mhm,
excitement for the people that you love and take care of yourself at the same time.
mm. Yeah, that's a huge one too. I never thought about that. Just to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to try. I'm going to show up, but just know that if I have to leave, it's because I'm struggling, but I wanted to try. And I think that's beautiful, because it just gives you the opportunity, like you had experienced. It's okay. It's okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. Okay. I'm not okay. Now it's time to leave, right? Just honoring where you're at. But you also had that opportunity to spend part of the day with them. So maybe that's too. Maybe it's not being there for the whole day. Maybe it's, hey, I can show up for a little bit, but when you start opening gifts, I'm gonna have to leave then, or I'm gonna come in a little later so I don't have to talk to anybody, or, trying to figure out a different way that would maybe work, but honoring just where you're at and what you can handle. But yeah, just talking to them early, I think that's a huge part too, because going through the whole journey with them, if you're pretending, right? Like, I'm so happy for you, and then you're never telling them what your experience is, right? They're going to be kind of taken back a little bit when you say, hey, I can't be there, right? So, but like just having that conversation from the beginning, like, I'm so happy you're pregnant, but I'm also just wanting to let you know where I'm at. So if you ever feel like I'm just not right, it could be because I'm struggling. And then they kind of have a better understanding of where you're at. So I think that's perfect to kind of just be honest from the beginning if you can, or as soon as you feel like you can. But that will be easier when you get to those more difficult days, or the first birthdays and those things that maybe you aren't ready to be able to attend. So yeah, that's a huge part, definitely. And then I guess in survival, because I think what is probably the hardest part is most people feel like they have to do it in private, is survive this, right? This isn't something that you're given a diagnosis, right? And you're just able to tell people and say, everybody come and help me, right? I need help. You're open about it. It's not something that you feel like, I mean, you have a diagnosis, so everybody's going to be like, okay, what can I do for you? How can I help you? Can I help you with this, that, whatever? I'm here for you. I'm praying for you. But after a loss, unfortunately, our society kind of says, well, unless I've been through what you've been through, you can just kind of keep that to yourself, right? Like you kind of have to survive in silence, and suffer in silence. So part of that survival is really just being, which you touched on, just being open with where you're at and your grief and where you're at in the process, and not judging yourself at how long it's taking or the steps you're taking, but what could be kind of the beginning part of just letting people know how much you are suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what you're describing is what's known as disenfranchised grief. It means
Mm-hmm.
when you have a loss that society does not normally recognize. So pregnancy loss is often one of those kinds of experiences. Now, thank goodness there are organizations like Share. There's a lot of organizations out there that are doing, like we always say, break the silence, right? And
Yeah.
that's what we are all working to do, is to make it so that these pregnancy losses are not disenfranchised losses anymore, but they are losses that actually happen within the community and
Mm-hmm.
are acknowledged by the community.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that happens. If you have people around you who have experienced loss, oftentimes they are much more open to
Yes.
discussing your experience, to being there with you. I often say this is the worst club you'll ever join. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
ever wants to belong to this club. But once you're in it together with
Mm-hmm.
people who understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, talking just in general like this does help to kind of break that silence and break that
Yeah.
stigma. Definitely, if you are someone who is not in a community that has experienced pregnancy loss and actually, speaks about it openly, then seek out communities that do. There,
Mm-hmm.
we have an online community with Share. We have this support group. We have events that happen throughout the year where your loss, your parenthood are acknowledged. The importance of your baby is acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
So look for community, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
here locally in Lancaster with Share, or if there's online groups. There are a ton of online groups. 24 hours a day, you can find support
Yeah.
in different groups. So find people who understand. Don't, be isolated. There's so many people out there who have been through this and who want to offer support to you. If you
Mm-hmm.
need to talk to someone, reach out. Postpartum Support International is a group that has 24-hour a day hotlines now that are available. They have online support groups every day of the week for pregnancy loss. So if you need support, please do reach out. If you need more ideas, reach out to Share. We can give you more ideas about where to find ongoing support. You don't have to do this alone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's huge. That's huge. And I think too, a lot of things that with what Share offers in just their walk, it's the perfect opportunity to maybe invite somebody who maybe doesn't know what your experience has been like after your loss, but to kind of experience just the magnitude of families that have gone through this, right? And to just see just us coming together and unifying and supporting each other. And that can be like a nice way to kind of, if you need to, be able to open somebody up into that world who's maybe in your life all the time, but really doesn't get to see what your life is like now, what your new normal is. But maybe coming into an event like that and opening them up to that, that's an opportunity to kind of open them into your life and what it looks like, and um, a good opportunity to help you be able to be more vocal about your grief and your healing and where you're at.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So are there any other, before we close out, any other things that you could offer or suggest that could help us in those early days or years and years later as just kind of a guide to get through those difficult times where we kind of, hey, we're doing really good, but then we have a really rough day? What would be just any other additional advice to kind of get through those days?
So one thing I would say is to expect that there's going to be hard days, especially around what's called anniversary events. So your baby's original due date, the first holidays, or any holidays, not only the first, but the day that you found out that your baby had a diagnosis. Any of these days, when they come around again, expect that you might have anniversary reactions. Build it into your schedule if you can. Give yourself flexibility during the week leading up to it, if you have the ability to do that. Not everybody does, but if you can, set aside some time to be intentional, to say, you know what, this was a really big deal for me. And now here we are at the first anniversary of this event. Here we are at my baby's birthday, which is when I lost them. Here we are at their due date. Acknowledge it. It's important. Give yourself permission to say how important it is. And then also, if you find that you've missed a date, don't judge yourself for it. Don't judge yourself because a date went by that should have been something that, or you believe is something that you should have remembered. But it went by and you felt okay and you didn't think about it. It's all right. You're allowed to heal. You're allowed to continue with your life. If you don't love your baby any less because a day went by and you forgot, it's okay. So just expect that the calendar might impact your feelings. And if you can, set yourself some time to be gentle with yourself.
No, I love that. And thank you for just acknowledging that it's okay and to give ourselves grace. Because I mean, just personally, it took me 4 years to even acknowledge that I had gone through 2 losses. It was, my survival was pretending it never happened. And that's how I survived those first 4 years until I said, hey, this is not working. I feel exactly the same. So my survival was not getting me out of any of these deep waters. So after that, it was, okay, I need to really kind of break down what's important to me with this loss. And it really was acknowledging those days and putting special events on those days. It wasn't so much at some point just grieving it, yes, on those days, but also like, what can I do to make this a special day and reconnect with my child, and really stand out that the relationship we have, even though they're not here, I can still build that and still build those memories in my family. So yeah, I love that, don't be so hard on yourself. If you go and you say, oh, I just missed, that was a month ago and I hadn't even realized that we hit that anniversary. That's okay, right? Because it's wherever you're at, whatever you're doing to survive, whatever you're doing to kind of just get through day to day. So definitely thank you for reminding us that there is no right way, right? There's no right way. And we're just kind of here to help you with some tools that might make it just a little bit easier, right? But there's no right way to do it. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much.